They call him Cool Cool Khan. Cool, cool, cool. Oops. Hi everyone, welcome to my Chanel. Look at this. Yeah, I'm giving you looks, I'm giving you hair, I'm giving you makeup, I'm giving you everything. So please subscribe, like, share, talk to your friends about this. I'm doing this for the people. So let's go support each other. I'm doing this little video. It's gonna be a two-part video about a subject that I really am very passionate about. Always has been ever since the release of the movie in 2018, because I think it's polarizing yet to certain type of audience, but it's also such a great source of discussion about race and inclusion and diversity in Hollywood at large, but also about Afrofuturism and what it means to to actually address issues about colonization, but also about Hollywood harnessing this whole deal of representing Black people, sometimes for virtue signaling. And we're gonna try to realize, okay, son, come through. Okay, hi. It's gonna be a bit different this time, so we're gonna do a two-part video. So the first part, this part, is gonna be about Black Panther, the 2018 first movie, and the second part is gonna be about Black Panther 2, Black Panther. Oh my God, Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever. So why am I doing a two-part? Because I just wanted to do like a quick review of the second movie of Wakanda Forever, but I think it's very important to talk about the first one, the cultural impact, to really understand what we have to say about the second movie, because I think the second movie has loads to offer, but it's a very interesting bridge made with the first one, and I think we need to discuss the basis before going further. So let's jump in. So I'm gonna give you a couple of information about the movie for those who never saw the movie. It happens. Black Panther, the movie, was made in 2018 by the African-American director Ryan Coogler. He also directed Fruitvale Station and Creed prior to this. The movie is part of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Precisely, it's part of the third phase of Infinity Saga, leading up to Endgame. So in the movie, we meet Prince T'Challa. He's the Black Panther, and he must take over as leader of his kingdom, Wakanda, after the passing of his father, King T'Chaka, and he must protect his people from external threats that will turn out to be closer to home, as he didn't expect that. The movie deals with the concept of globalization, of power, and the war on natural resources at large, and on a deeper level, it deals with family engraved with race, colonization, and ethics and values. So the critically acclaimed movie is the highest grossing movie by a Black director, the 9th highest grossing movie of all time, and the first superhero movie to have an Oscar nomination for Best Picture, and to win at several categories at the ceremony. Moreover, Black Panther is a social phenomenon. It's the first Black superhero movie since Blade in the 2000s, so almost 20 years in the making. But it's also the first Black superhero movie to have an entire main cast that is Black. So it stars the late Chadwick Boseman as King T'Challa, aka the Black Panther, Lupita Nyong'o as the spy and war dog Nakia, Danai Gurira as General Okoye. She is the leader of the all-female Wakandan army called the Dora Milaje, and this army includes Florence Kasumba as Ayo. So we also have Letitia Wright, who plays Princess Shuri, Daniel Kaluuya, who plays Wakabi of the Border Tribe and the husband to Okoye. Winston Duke plays Mbaku, the leader of the enemy tribe, the Jabari. Forrest Whitaker plays Zuri, one of the elders, and Queen Angela Bassett plays Queen Ramonda, and Anthony B. Jordan plays Eric Killmonger. He's an American war dog who has personal beef with Wakanda. So to this, we add the only two white supporting cast members, whom are Andy Serkis as Clow, a mercenary who stole from Wakanda, and Martin Freeman as Agent Ross, a CIA operative who gets tangled in Wakandan affairs. If you know a little bit about the Black Panther comic books from Marvel, you can understand that they are accurate, but in a way, they are brought to this era with a couple of changes, to kind of really represent what they wanted to say through the script. Above that, the music was helmed by Kendrick Lamar and Ludwig Göransson with Senegalese musician Baba Mal. So why this long introduction? You may ask, because, if we clicked on the video, it means that we saw the movie before. So yeah. So you remember my favorite expression on this channel, you know what it is. Give you a couple of seconds. Of course, inclusive representation. Yay! In a way, I wanted to state all these names, all those people, etc., to kind of show you what inclusive representation kind of looks like in a way in nowadays Hollywood. If all the producers and the studio itself are mainly white people and white entities, the inception of the project itself stays African American and African at large, you know, because the culture is represented and being held by people who are part of the culture to begin with. Even if the money comes from elsewhere, the money is put to those creatives that are going to do the climb up that, you know, will lead to the prerequisites that we all need for an inclusive story that gives truthful representation. It kind of is a good example of what I've been talking about in my last 3 videos. What we always do here is that when we love something, when something is trying to represent and we are, you know, okay, it's here, it's bringing the people, you know, to the screens, you know, people are talking about it, but is it truly inclusive? Is it really doing the job, or is it just here to kind of, you know, do some virtue signaling here? You know, Hollywood loves that. So is Black Panther truly inclusive? So in my opinion, I would say yes. The way that the characters were written, it's not handled in the way that you will write characters that are not characters of color, and more specifically that are not black. You know, there is some deeper meaning to every character's journey in this movie. In a way, it's not just, you know, for instance, Killmonger, which might be the most visual example of that. He's not just being represented as a big bad villain, the big bad guy of the whole entire movie. You know, he has some depth to the character, and you kind of see and feel that it was something that was already on paper first, because the craft itself, the kind of very intertwining, you know, aspect of his personality that is very, very, very pro-black and very Black Panther, but not the comic book Black Panther, but the movement itself. You know, he takes a lot from that, but also from his own personal experience. But also you have, like, you know, the whole story arcs about, you know, black women being extremely important and very present in that movie. You know, apart from T'Challa and Killmonger, most of the main cast are black women, and we get to explore them. There's like a cultural thing to all that, and that's why all the story arcs feels true to something that's representative. I'm watching this movie, I don't see myself saying, oh, this could have been played by a white person or an Asian person, you know, or a Latinx person. It is black. It kind of weaves into the fact that the cast members are African American, but some are, you know, British Caribbean, Kenyan. Danai Gurira is from Zimbabwe. You have people from a bit around the African diaspora around the world that is woven into the story. Most of these actors kind of take influences from their own original accents, if they are not from America, of course. For instance, Lupita Nyong'o, when she speaks, you can hear a couple of like Kenyan English. Same for Danai Gurira. She is speaking Xhosa, and she is using this language to kind of define her character, but sometimes when she speaks English, you can hear the little influence from the Zimbabwean English. That makes it more genuine. It also leads to talking about cultural representation, which is a big part of that movie, you know. Black Panther really kind of dug into the African diaspora, the culture around the world. It's not just African American culture, you know, that like we would expect it from, you know, a Hollywood movie. You can see that, you know, they really went far and kind of dug into what it would be to live in a country, an African country that haven't been colonized up till now, and what the culture would look like. Nigeria, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Kenya, South Africa. They kind of took inspiration from all that, of course, from Egypt, and they kind of wove all that into a kind of, how can I say, like a potpourri of, you know, what this country will be like, because of course Wakanda is fictional. Every single tribe in the movie has its very own distinctive inspiration from a very specific tribe, which is a Kenyan tribe, you know, for some part, or South African tribe. The music, of course, Baba Mal, who kind of really added the Senegalese, you know, influence to the music. Ludwig Göransson, you know, kind of wrote the basis of it, but you can feel that, you know, Baba Mal kind of came on and just added, you know, its chants and just aspiration here from Senegalese culture, and then you can find something from the Zulu ancestral chants that is being added on that music, and then you have kind of American packaging around around it, African American packaging around it, because it was helmed by Kendrick Lamar. So it's like this very 360 arrangement. For instance, you take something as the leitmotif for the Dora Milaje, the chup 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 chup. I love that, and African chant, that is being woven onto the music that's been written by Ludwig Göransson, but it has been produced and arranged by Kendrick Lamar. So you have this very cut way of Kendrick Lamar to kind of, mix music. And in the end, it gives this kind of hybrid sound that, in a way could have been the sound of Wakanda if it existed, and that's the interesting part of it. The set design, which kind of have this Afrofuturism thing going on through it, kind of, this thing of, again, what it would be like if Africa never been colonized, if slavery never existed, and we kind of were left with our own natural resources and grew into the country that we are. So it's a very American thing to say, because Afrofuturism is something that kind of started in America, within the African American culture and diaspora, and it kind of led to that. So basically, it's mostly you take the futuristic image that has always existed around, and then you add African cultural aspects to it, which is clothing and having like huts shaped buildings that looks very, very ancient and tribal from the outside, but when you enter it, it's just like gold everywhere and technology and this and this and that. And even in that as well, it's kind of representing that. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it's representing that. It's part of the African American culture, and it's here. So that's why, talking about all those things, watching this movie, I actually genuinely cannot say that it's not good inclusion. It makes the effort to really hire the people that knows their craft and knows what they are talking about when they're talking about African culture or African American culture, and getting them to work together and do a movie that's gonna pay homage to that. And that's a bit what Black Panther, the first one, gives us to see. So you might say that, where's the critique? Where is the bad stuff? Why aren't you saying that they didn't do this and this and that? I'm getting to this. Don't be impatient, please. I think it's important, as I try to do every time, before diving deep into something, just try to give the good thing that it's trying to achieve. And this movie achieves a lot. It's not a perfect movie. It has its flaws mostly, and I think that's kind of a given for everyone. Critics talked about that. The third act, and that's like a general Marvel issue. The third act is not very strong. I have to say, usually, so you have several acts in a movie: the first, second, and third. Usually, the third act is where you can find like the very climactic element of the movie. The big fight or the big conclusion of something epic that has been brewing for the first two acts. And usually in those superhero movies, usually in Marvel ones, there's kind of a formulaic aspect to it where you're gonna have the laser fight, like people flying around and just like pew 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 pew, shooting at each other, and just turns into this massive Disneyland kind of spectacle where everything is just shining and bright and everyone's fighting each other, and you don't really get that root of, okay, we kind of spent 2 hours or an hour and a half been rooted in conversation in people, and then now just everyone's flying around and stuff. So that's kind of an issue with the Marvel movies at large, and I might do a video about that in the future. But here I think it doesn't escape from that. So the third act, to me, it's kind of weak, because you can feel that it does take what it worked on in the first two acts, but the way that it is actually putting it on screen doesn't gel well with the rest of the movie. The rest of the movie, of course, there's action sequence here and there, of course, but where the movie gets really, really deep is during the conversations between the characters and the conflict itself, and when the director is kind of pointing at us and telling us think. And there's not much of that in the end, in the final sequence, because it just feels like everyone is just fighting everyone. I think it would have been better if it was something, just having like a political, or like something like a talk, like something, different. Of course, we wouldn't have like the big laser fights and, the Panthers fighting each other and all those things, which, of course, most of the Marvel audience are looking for. But I think it kind of fails in that way. And that's why I'm not saying it fails in the way that, many Marvel movies does. It still holds up, but it is a bit weak in that sense. So yeah, you have that, but you also have like a couple of like plot holes as well in the whole story, that sometimes doesn't really add up about Wakanda and its history and the science behind it. Also the whole geopolitical aspect of it, when you're talking about an African country that's been hidden for years and pitting it against European countries or American countries. And to me, the boiling point should have been a bit more, because in the end, I think there was much more things to be said in that relationship as well. We don't really address that, and that's kind of, we could, but then we get the second movie where they kind of talk about that, and we gotta talk about that in the other video. Well, sorry for the change of quality, because the sun decided to show up while I was filming my video. How rude. I like that yellow, hue. Where was I? Okay, is it performative? Is it, or is it not? Well, it is Hollywood heavy. I mean, to be honest. Let's not forget. So it is a Marvel movie. So it's produced by Marvel Studios, which is owned by Disney, which owns everything basically right now. So, and it is a very, very expensive movie. It is very Hollywood heavy. It being that, and also being produced and financed and helmed by, again, as I said, white entities and white people. It is performative to that level. We've had 10 years of nothing. I would say even more, like maybe 15 years of nothing in that way. We had Blade, which again, black superhero movie. We kind of forget that, but it still is. But then nothing really in terms of that much money being placed into something to kind of create something like that, for the black audience. Why did it take so long, if it's not performative? I can't say it's not performative, to be honest, because of course it existed in a time where Hollywood was kind of realizing that, oh, it's actually important and lucrative to kind of make movies about black people for the black audience. Why am I talking like that? I think at some point in the chain of commands was like, okay, we can experience that, we can try that, and let's see, if a black movie can bring money. And of course, in that way, it is performative. But what I can say, to counter that, is that in the end, they did take a massive risk by giving this movie to a guy that only directed one big blockbuster movie from that. And I can't really say that Creed was like this massive of a blockbuster movie. It didn't cost as much as Black Panther to be made. It was a hit. It was a Marvel level hit, and they kind of gave it to him. And he's better known for Fruitvale Station, which is, again, if you haven't seen it, go see it. You can see many things of Black Panther or Wakanda Forever starting in Fruitvale Station. He is a very, driven and pro-black and very for the people, for the culture type of director. It was kind of a risk that they took, by giving the direction to him and the script to him and his people. They didn't know if it would pay off, if it would even bring money, to the studio. They kind of did that. So again, Hollywood heavy, performative, but they did take a risk, and in the end it paid off, because it's the ninth biggest grossing movie of all time. So last point that I'm going to talk about is the issue with understanding inclusive art. So why am I talking about that? I personally feel that this movie is inclusive representation. It does so much for the culture. It does so much for the movie industry itself, and it does so much for representation at large. But I am aware that it has its flaws, and which I stated, and that it's not a perfect movie, and that it is performative and Hollywood heavy, even though there was risks taken and things made that really changed the course of the industry throughout the last 5 years. You're doing great things, but then again, you're also part of the system, so how do we get past that? And do we even get past that, or just acknowledge it as it is? But I think it really comes to terms when we watch several videos in the last 5 years of content creators like myself or critics talking about Black Panther. I'm talking about mostly white people, because I think that there is a way to understand and to work on reviewing and understanding inclusive art. Because what's inclusive art? It's basically what we just saw with Black Panther, the first one, and it might be other things as well. Insecure, the TV show, Living Single, the 90s TV show that I talked about as well. Moonlight, the movie, all those things that are inclusive art. I think there's a very distinct, and I'm just talking about African American and African inclusive art here, because I could have talked about Crazy Rich Asians, I could have talked about The Farewell and Encanto, but it does apply to all races in the end. To me, what I have to say is that there is a very distinct scrutiny and a very, very, very specific attention to be placed in inclusive art when you're reviewing it if you're not from the culture. There's this thing of not everything is for everyone. And that's, I think, a thing that many people nowadays kind of struggle with, and mostly when we're talking about modern Hollywood, which is basically superhero time, because most of the highest grossing movies, the past 10 years, maybe a bit more, are superhero movies, thanks to the MCU and the DC. You kind of feel at some point that it's the superhero genre, it's my genre, so everything has to be for me. Everything has to be catered for me directly. And you kind of don't even think of that. I think it's kind of unconscious, it's a very unconscious thing when you're like, oh yeah, that movie's out. Yeah, it has to speak to me. It's kind of that cultural thing that we're going in. And I think it's very interesting to talk about that. And with this movie very specifically, it was one of the first that, it wasn't geared towards generally white audience. Many people kind of missed the point behind it. And I don't think we'll ever understand that. Of course, this movie has its flaws. And many people from the outside might see it. And again, I hear all that. And I think most Black people kind of hear all that, when we're talking about that. But what's important is that the experience itself, the cultural experience itself of watching a movie that has inclusive representation, when you're a person of color that it's geared towards to, it's very different. So I'm going to talk to you about my very own experience right now. So basically when I went to see the movie, again, I was kind of in a place where I was like, oh, Marvel. I'm a huge comic book fan. If you can see, I have my comic books and everything. I was in a phase where I was like, oh, yeah, I've been disappointed with the movies before. Like, I don't really know what to look for. And I had the time of my life. It was such an experience. I don't know how to even start explaining it to you, but it's just the fact that I was looking at the screen, I saw my cousins, I saw my mom, I saw my aunties. You had Black people of every sizes, That's the thing as well. It wasn't just the fit, big Marvel movie guys, that just spend hours at the gym, and get paid for that and stuff like that. It was all body types. I saw my body type on the screen for the very, very first time in ages. And I was like, wow, wow, Winston Duke. I've never really seen that represented in the superhero genre before. And also the music, everything kind of held me. And also I sat there and was left with a message as well. The whole thing of, should they have helped the other nations and the other Black people, the Black diaspora around the world with all the money and the things that they have? Yeah, of course, in a way, they were guilty of that, but can we understand why they do that? It kind of pushed me to think deeper into the thing. Was Killmonger really the bad guy here? It kind of left me with all those things and just thinking of it and just saying wow, I haven't been challenged this much, in a very, very long time by a Marvel movie, let alone a superhero movie. And it was an experience in itself, an experience of me being in that room and watching over there and seeing another Black couple, then and having the look of, wow, this is special. I grew up in a place where me loving comic books, you don't really get to see yourself represented. I mean, of course, the stories you do have Black characters, but when it's time to be adapted on screen, not much representation. And I have to grow up me looking at white superheroes and try to identify with them, to make that extra effort because it's not in me, because when you don't see something reflecting yourself or being you, you have to have this extra effort of, oh, okay, let me project myself, identify with that superhero. So I had to do that my entire life. And then it came into 2018, I looked at it and I was like, oh wow, I would have loved to have that when I was a kid, and that's why it made me happy, because I'm thinking of my nieces, my little cousins. I'm really happy that they have that. They will have that growing up with that. They will see themselves represented. This is always going to be my experience. So in the end, watching that movie and analyzing this, I think it trumps the bad part. And I'm not saying that if it was a terrible movie, we'll support it. There's loads of terrible inclusive art, that I don't support and that many people don't support. But here, it was a good movie. Not perfect, but a good movie. But the not perfect part gets trumped by the experience of it. And that's the thing. And I think that many critics and many people, reviewers or content creators, if you just go around and look at videos of Black Panther, people reviewing it, if they are not Black, kind of skipped over that part and kind of just got the technical aspect of it. And they're right, that's what they're doing. But then when faced into an argument or confrontation with a Black person talking about Black Panther and saying how they loved it, it's always hard because it always goes to the conversation of, oh yeah, but I don't understand why you think it was better than this movie. Why did it get nominated and this one did not? It is something that we need to talk more about, that we need to take more space as content creators or just journalists or critics, just to talk about that, to acknowledge that not everything is made for everyone. Honestly, Black Panther wasn't made for everyone. Let's be honest about that. It's inclusive art. It was an ode and homage to the black culture, the black diaspora around the world. I think that was the main audience towards it, but it being a Marvel movie, it was also directed towards a wider range of audience. And that's why when you're watching it from the outside of that, you kind of skip over that. And you know what? It's okay, because again, not everything has to be for everyone. Take a movie that just came out recently, which is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Great movie. I honestly don't have anything negative to say about it. Insanely great movie. And it is also a movie that is inclusive. I can see that as inclusive art. Because it's a good movie, there's no doubt about it. We're just saying that it's a good movie. But did you really get the very racial aspect of the movie that was very, very buried underneath the plot sometimes, but which was kind of the basis itself of the story? It's not something that's being said, being mentioned in the script or being done. It's something that's around it. It's something that is culturally woven into the story that I can see and detect and be like, oh wow, that makes me happy, you know, makes me proud. And there's an aspect of that, I think, in inclusive art. That's to me what's interesting in that, and that's why I wanted to start with Black Panther, because there was also a discourse for the second movie. Many black content creators and people and critic was saying like, no, if you're white, please don't go see the movie on the opening night and just give your ticket to someone, or please let this be ours, please don't create. Like, there was loads of things about that, and I think it's because of that. And I don't think it's very productive to have like this division of, okay, because it's inclusive art, you're not allowed to talk about it, you're not allowed to review it, you're not allowed to say something bad about that. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that in order to not get there, and I think I'm also speaking to the black content creators as well here, I think there is a degree of understanding of hearing here as a black content creator that the white content creator or critic can't have this cultural aspect, this very in-depth experience that you have while you watch a movie as Black Panther and being a black person. They will never have that. Unfortunately, they will have, if they can understand it and search deep into it, they will, but it's not in the basis of it, you know, for them. And then on the other side, you are missing out of one thing, and it's unfortunate, and it's not your fault, you know. It's like that because the movie wasn't made specifically for you, and that's okay. And while reviewing, critiquing, or just watching this, you have to take that into consideration as well, and then accept that a person of color might not agree with you. Race do play a part in that, and I think is what's going to lead us to our second video about Black Panther Wakanda Forever, because there's a lot of that in that movie, and I think it's very interesting to touch on that. So yeah, that is my video. I think I really hope I was succinct. I don't know if I was, but if you kind of do a very quick resume of what we did and throughout this whole entire video, it's just literally to say that, yeah, of course, Black Panther is an inclusive movie. It is inclusive art, like we can call it, because again, it is representation from the ground itself to the top, even if it's been financed, and that's what we're asking as well. Of course, the money can't come from the black community, because that's not where the money is. But if you finance the creatives from the get-go, the climb then is going to be leading up to truthful representation on the screen, not just, you know, virtue signaling. And that's what that movie does. Of course, it's a flawed movie. Third act, a couple of plot holes and details, CGI, but I don't, you know, it's Marvel, so, you know, it has its flaws. It's not perfect, you know, it's a good movie, it's not a great movie. It also is performative, it's Hollywood heavy, but again, the risk that was taken and the door that it opened to help those creators, those directors kind of build our own table, not just have a seat at the table, kind of trumps that, or does it or not. That's where the conversation has to stand. And also in the end, I think to be able to really understand this type of inclusive art, we really have to be able to understand and really understand that not everything is for everyone. And even sometimes if it feels that it is for everyone, there is a very subtlety to have when you're watching a movie, to know and understand that a black person is not going to react and feel the same way as a white person while watching a movie that is inclusive art directed towards African American or African, because there's this part of this experience that a white person will never be able to have, unfortunately, or will have if it's really deep into, you know, awakening and knowing and knowledge about, you know, it's true allyship, really, then it might have a bit of it, and just understand that. But there is a work to be done in terms of understanding inclusive art. That's part of the things that this movie kind of wrote about, you know, today, because we are in a place where more and more movies gonna be made for very, very niche groups. And I think we just have to step to a point and say that, of course, yeah, it has its flaws, but just it wasn't made for me, you know. I can critique it and say like, okay, it was bad, this and this, but I don't have to be like, oh, it's terrible, don't go see it, cancel it. Yeah, it's just not made for you, you know. Let it live, let it be. So yeah, that's the video. So my conclusion will be that, and we're gonna talk in the second movie deeper. We're gonna go deeper into this question of inclusive art and what it really means to see and experience art that wasn't made for you, and how we can, as a collective, I'm saying black, white people, everyone together, kind of understand again how to better talk about that and understand it, and bring more light and intelligence, and patience to the discussion, instead of just hating and canceling everything, or just saying like, oh, you're not allowed to go to that movie theater because it's something made for me, not for you. Yeah, just like soften the conversation and just, see around that. So yeah, that was the video. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, subscribe, and comment, and let me know if you like that, if you like that format, if you want me to do more like this. I will be back very soon with the second part of the video, I promise. And yeah, and until then, please love each other, try to understand, and really see and hear people when we're talking, not just standing in our own lane. The world is made for everyone. And some things are just made for some people and some are made for others, and it's okay, Yeah, let's be patient with each other. Okay, so much love to you guys. I will see you very, very soon, and bye. Oh, no, let me know all the stars are gold, so